Alrighty, ladies and gents, we are jumping all the way to chapter 23. We're skipping quite a few sections. We may come back to them, we may not. It just depends on how much time we have. Today we're going to be on chapter 23.1. So how I'd like you to start off, please start by reading page 519. This is question 1, by the way. Read page 519, plants overcome obstacles to living on land. It stops at page 520. It's just a 2-paragraph section. Then answer this question: what are the 3 main obstacles plants had to overcome to be able to live on land? So you're just listing those 3 obstacles, and they are in those 2 paragraphs. So please pause now and do that. Moving forward. So I left this little picture here. We're talking specifically about, or mostly about, vascular plants. We also have a little bit of the non-vascular coming in here too. The big topics that I'm probably going to go back and forth to the slide hitting, excuse me, are xylem, phloem. We're going to talk about those guys. We're going to talk about stoma and stomata, guard cells. We'll talk a little bit about the epidermis, but not super in depth. We're going to be talking more about the cuticle. Okay. This palisade mesophyll and the spongy mesophyll, we're not going to talk about a whole lot. Just know they are parts of a leaf. Okay? Moving forward. Oh, wait, sorry, not moving forward. Please do take a moment and watch this video down here. It really helps get into, excuse me, the leaf structure, what this leaf is made of, and all of these kind of things. It helps review some of the terms here as well. So be ready for that. Okay, do that now, pause, and then move forward. All right, so the first little bit that we're going to be talking about here, we're going to be talking about those 3 main ways, or those 3 main obstacles that plants had to overcome. We're going to be talking about them real slow throughout. So first big obstacle these plants had to overcome was absorbing minerals. So plants have this symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizae. Now, mycorrhizae are a type of fungi. These fungi hang out at the roots of plants. We've talked about them a little bit, but maybe not super in depth. They provide plants with carbohydrates, and the fungi provide nutrients from the soil. So the fungi essentially sit around those roots, and they help deteriorate some of that soil. They eat some of that soil around them, that dead, decaying matter. The plants, being there, shed some of their cells as they go, providing them with carbohydrates as well. So the fungi are providing nutrients from the soil, and the plants are providing food for the fungi. So it works really well for both. Second big deal here is conserving water. So plants develop in the seas, basically. They develop in water. So when they start to come out of water, they need to find a way to hold water inside of them so that they don't just dry out and die, right? Think about taking a hunk of algae or a hunk of duckweed out of a pond and just setting it on the sidewalk. It'll dry out. It'll die very rapidly. So plants develop this watertight outer covering called a cuticle. Now the cuticle is kind of on the outside of the epidermis, if you recall from this slide here, this slide. So this is our epidermis, right? Epidermis essentially meaning skin, right? The cuticle's on top of that. It's just like a waxy coating. Whew, too far. So cuticle is made of this waxy substance that covers the above ground parts of the plant. So the parts of the plant that can't just constantly be sucking in water like the roots. Passage through the cuticle, because stuff needs to get in through that cuticle, right? Plant needs carbon dioxide, and plant needs to release oxygen to survive. These passages are called the stomata. We also call them stoma. It just depends on if you're talking plural or not. The Greek word stoma means mouth. It's an opening, right? Just like your yapper while you're talking to people, right? It's a mouth. So guard cells border the stomata and allow it to open and close. So if we pop back real quick, too far. If we pop back real quick, we have these 2 little guard cells here, and you can see them better up here, but they didn't label them up at the top. These 2 guard cells, right? You can see there's a little gap between them, and this guy is pointing at that little gap. So that little gap is our stoma, or our stomata. And too far again. Whew. All right. So we got that down. If you have questions about that, please let me know. We're just talking about, this is really just a structural thing with us conserving water. All right, moving forward. Reproducing on land. So in water, male and female gametes literally just swim to each other. Algae gametes just swim around till they find each other. The male and female gametes need to be able to reach each other for reproduction, right? That's how plants reproduce. That's how most sexual organisms reproduce. They have to have the two gametes meet somehow. So in more advanced plants, other than algae and a handful of weird plants, sperm are enclosed to keep them from drying out. So they're enclosed in pollen, they're enclosed in some sort of a cell set. So these structures allow gametes to be transmitted by wind, insects, animals, rather than water. So instead of just swimming around to find another gamete, they can easily go through and do this through wind, insects, what have you, the bumblebees, right? Day 17, still a pumpkin. Sorry, my bad. Keep moving. So vascular system enables plants to thrive on land. The vascular system is this big deal. Is the very first kind of the biggest deal when we're talking about getting large plants surviving on land, like trees and whatnot. So to be effective in the transfer of water and the nutrients throughout a plant needs plumbing. I want you to think sort of like your veins and your arteries, right? You need, as a person, plumbing to make sure that the tips of your fingers get the nutrients they need, rather than just the cells in your stomach. So plants need this same thing. The vascular system of the plant are tissues that transport water and other materials within the plant. And so that vascular system that the plant has is xylem and phloem. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize. There are 3 phyla today for plants that are non-vascular and 9 phyla that are vascular. So it's very clear that the vascular plants are doing much better and are more prolific than the non-vascular plants. They're pretty tough. All right, here are the questions, 2 through 5 at least. So we are looking at page 522 in your textbook, your normal textbook. It should say at the top, a vascular system enabled plants to thrive on land, and then it has a chart on the bottom half of 522 and in all of 523. So questions are, is Bryophyta vascular or non-vascular? Which 3 phyla are gymnosperms? Which 4 phyla are seedless? And which phylum is an angiosperm? Go ahead and find those out, write them down, and then pause for a minute, get that done, and we'll move forward. All right. So, early plants evolved with alternation of generations. Now, this is a really weird concept. It's a life cycle pattern in which haploid individuals alternate with diploid individuals. So I want you to think the parent is a haploid, and then it can have diploid offspring, but then the diploid offspring, when it becomes a parent, can have haploid offspring. Does that make sense? So if you have a grandparent that's a haploid, your parent could be diploid, and then you could be haploid again. So it just has that alteration of generations within its life cycle, so it kind of flip-flops. The first plants lacked a vascular system. I kind of brushed over this really quick a little while ago. When they're first coming out of the water, they need to be really small to survive on land without a vascular system. I want you to think about these big old trees here, right? If nothing is in here to pull water all the way up to the tips of these branches, the trees die, right? The tree dies. When we think about like maybe this little teeny plant, right? It would almost have to be smaller than that little teeny plant there. When we think about this little teeny plant, we got to have something just right below it, and that water can just be there, right? It's already there. The plant can take it in. It's not a big deal. What we're really more talking about are mosses, where it rains on that moss, and that moss just holds the water as almost like a carpet, right? So these plants are even really too big for that to happen. Anyway, the first plants lack a vascular system. They had to be very small to survive on land. Their gametes are formed by mitosis in a separate multicellular structures. So these guys form gametes in a different way. Sorry, guys. They form them in archegonia, and that is what we have to produce eggs. So that's archegonia, and antheridia. So antheridia produce sperm, archegonia produce eggs. Mosses have simple vascular tissue. Again, we're talking about those first plants, very small, can survive on land without a vascular system. But mosses have this simple vascular tissue. Moss sporophyte is made of bare stalk that supports a spore capsule called a sporognum, in which haploid spores are produced by meiosis. So we've got this sporognum that is that bare stalk, right? Move forward. Vascular plants have several features. Specialized conducting tissue. Here is where I got a little ahead of myself earlier. So we have phloem, which moves carbohydrates away from the places they're made to other parts of the plant. We have xylem, which moves water up from the roots into higher parts of the plant. So if I switch back way far, okay, we have xylem and phloem, and they're both in this kind of centralized tube here. If you watched the video here, you will have noticed that xylem and phloem are, very common parts of the plant. Xylem, when you bite into celery, those nasty stringy pieces, that's what we're talking about there. That's your xylem. All right, back to where we were. Ooh, too far. Okay. So that's xylem. That moves water up from the roots to higher parts of the plant. Phloem moves carbohydrates away from places they're made. The way I was taught to remember this is phloem flows down, right? Phloem takes all of these sugars, all of these carbohydrates, and takes them down to roots, down to the parts of the plant that need it. Xylem goes up, okay? Xylem takes water up. So distinctive body forms, just understanding the real basics. Most of you have heard of shoots and roots. Roots are considered all below ground structures of the plant. Shoots are all above ground structures of the plant. And then we've got meristems. These guys produce plant growth and can be on shoots or roots. So the very tip of a root, maybe like a root cap, could be considered a root meristem. You can also have shoot meristems, so the very tippy top of a tree, the very end of a branch, and things along those lines. So here's the last question of the night, day, whatever, whenever you're doing this. Number 6, draw a plant diagram that includes the labeled images of meristem, shoots, roots, xylem, phloem, stomata, guard cells, and cuticle. If you need to zoom in, zoom out images of the plant, that's fine. If you need more than one picture, that's also fine. Do your best to try and make it one or maybe like one or two. Make sure all of the above parts are labeled. Labeled is the key word here. Please label them, otherwise we'll be very sad, and I will not give you credit for this one, okay? Make sure they're labeled. Labeled. All right, move forward. Or pause, do your thing, and then we'll move forward. Okay. Just a reminder, you got this. This is the end of section 23.1. In the future, I will keep it on this slide set, at least for 23. So 23.2 and 23.3 will both be posted on this slide set, but I will make new videos for them. All right, let me know if you have any questions. You got this, guys. Bye.